Hi everyone. Kindness is helping a person improve their quality of thinking and with that improve their quality of life. So as in a dementia unit, kindness is bringing in the quizzes, the crosswords, the newspapers, the material, the reading material. So the dementia resident has a chance to be able to focus, concentrate, engage and ground themselves. And with that, they have a much better chance of being able to be kind, patient and tolerant to the other less fortunate dementia residents in the facility, of which there is always such a range and so many, distracting, disturbing, often personality traits and behavioural problems. But if the person is engaged, they're reading, they're focused, then they're able to, access that tolerance and kindness towards the other dementia residents. And this helps in a facility enormously. So just to explain one situation or a few situations that I had at the dementia facility I was working at and how kindness was facilitated within the residents, group. So initially in the workshops I was running, it was really difficult because there was the core group that was starting to engage. As I just mentioned in the previous video, this took some time, but they were starting to engage. But it's very difficult to focus, concentrate and engage in a dementia unit because there's so much noise and distraction going on. People are sometimes, screaming or fighting or calling out, and to try and focus and concentrate within that is just, it's often bedlam. It's really hard, especially when it's a fledgling concentration. They've only just managed to garner this effort. And so, if you're not used to concentrating or reading or studying or thinking, and you've got all this disturbance, it really takes a lot of willpower, a lot of focus and concentration to be able to do that. So initially the group used to get so frustrated and, they'd call out, shut up, be quiet. We're trying to think, we're trying to concentrate, we're trying to listen and we're trying to speak, and we don't want to hear you. And of course, that would just rile the person up that was screaming out, I want to get home, I want to get out, where's my son, whatever, the usual. And it would just rile them up and they'd just shout louder and longer. And then, of course, that would distract the group. It was hard to get the thinking back on track, the topic back on track, anything back on track. Oh, really, it took a lot of effort, and a lot of effort from everyone's part, including mine, I have to say. And, we wondered whether we could get through all this because there was only really half a day, half an hour in the afternoon at staff changeover when it was quiet, when we actually did have time to really focus. That was fantastic, that half hour from about 3 o'clock to 3:30. Oh, it was wonderful. No kitchen clatter, medication clatter, staff, with relatives and phone calls. As long as the residents were settled, which hopefully when they were, say half the time anyway, at that time you could actually get half an hour of really good quality time because it was quiet and the residents had often had the hour workshop before that, so they were stimulated and intellectually engaged, so they were on board, and then they just had that wonderful half hour. And it was in that time that we really came up with these, I discovered that these people could think, through another channel of thinking, not just through the mind, which was dysfunctional. We know that that's dysfunctional, but they could channel their thinking from their mind through the intellect to the intellectual engagement with the crosswords and the quizzes and the word games and the reading and the newspaper reading. They could focus and concentrate and stimulate their thinking through this channel of thinking. And I realized that these people were thinking through their intellect. I mean, we all know the intellect exists. Since Socrates' time, that's been made well known. And of course, Einstein had the best intellect out, but it was because he used to think through it all the time that he had a great intellect. But we all have an intellect. It's just we don't use it as much as Einstein. We just use it for, examinations and university and, planning and solving problems. And, if you're a doctor, you're probably using your intellect all day. But for, the average job, you're not using your intellect all the time. And it takes an effort. Sometimes you don't want to use your intellect. You have to think, thinking can be an effort. Grinding through new lots of information or thinking about things in a different way. I mean, sometimes you just want to sit back on the couch and watch Netflix all night or scroll through your phone, mindlessly. That's using the mind, as in mindlessly. But thinking through the intellect does take effort. That's why, not everyone wants to be a university lecturer, because that takes intellect. Anyway, so these dear residents had to use the intellect if they wanted to have any quality of thinking at all. And it is a big effort, because the thing is, dementia residents don't have the luxury of sitting on the couch mindlessly, scrolling through, TikTok or watching the latest Netflix. I mean, well, they don't have the opportunity anyway, because they haven't got a big lounge and they haven't got, a screen with endless Netflix going on. But the thing is, it doesn't give them any pleasure, because it's only when they're engaging through the intellect that they can have satisfaction, happiness and pleasure, because their mind's dysfunctional. They've got no present memory. They can't remember what happened this morning, what they had for breakfast, how they got dressed. So that whole big component of present thinking, which a lot of us spend a lot of time in present thinking, is, not happening for them. And then also they've got dementia blanks and dementia spin, which happens through the mind, that they have to cope with. And then all the anxiety and the depression and the anger, all that emotional, angst that they experience, especially initially when going into a dementia facility, and then the stigma and prejudice on top of that, which they certainly had before they came into the unit, to a lesser extent in the unit. But all that's going on, all of that huge amount of mental trauma really is going on in their mind. And so they are just so happy if they can direct themselves away from that through this other channel, through the intellect, thinking through the intellect. And they know that through focus and concentration, they can do that, and they can start building their confidence and communicating and making friends in the group, which they did and value highly. But in terms of kindness and patience and tolerance, back to that, they realised in the end shouting out to the people to shut up or be quiet didn't work. They had to actually access patience and tolerance to be able to keep their focus going, because if they started shouting out to the people that were screaming, that would only just make them anxious and take them back into, volatile emotions. So they, in the end, as a group, realised they needed to, look, we have to be patient, we have to be tolerant, we have to keep cool, keep focused. And so in the end, they just worked as a group on that, and they built up their tolerance and patience to such an enormous degree that you could see their eyes blazing. They were so concentrated, and they, in the end, they were not affected, remarkably, with what was going on, because the practice, the discipline, the effort, the repeat practice enabled them to garner such a fabulous focus that they didn't become distracted or disturbed. Not like the relatives, when they came in, they would get distracted and disturbed with screaming residents. You could see that in their face. Not the residents. No, they're fine. Focus, concentrate, achieve through that. It was just remarkable what they achieved through that, those wonderful residents. And through that focus and tolerance and patience, they helped the other less able residents at the facility. Because patience and tolerance is a kindness, and the dementia residents were very kind in their patience and tolerance to other residents in the facility, 2 books I've written, The Resident's Voice and The Resident's Rise, from Amazon. Thank you, on Amazon. Thank you for your looks and your likes.